Hey, you guys. Entries and exits is what we're going to talk about tonight because it has been the topic of the conversation this entire week amongst students. And one of the things you may hear all the time is that mastering your entries and exit is going to be one of the most important things you can do as a trader. And yes, it is. But those entries are going to be 10 times more important than anything. And what I want to do is I want to take you guys to the chart, and we're going to use Tesla as our lesson chart today because this one has like literally the exact example or the perfect example that I want to show you guys of why identifying a level is important and what happens when a stock gets to a particular level. Now, another thing you also need to be very, very cautious of is if you're day trading or let's just say you're scalping, you probably aren't interested in what happened 6 months ago on the chart. You're probably not going too far to the left. You're mostly focusing on what's happening in that very moment. Now, if you're day trading, you may be interested in what happened yesterday or the day before because those levels are kind of still holding up in your day trade. But if you're someone such as myself, mostly swing trade, I like to go as far to the left as possible and to, I guess I would say, verify the levels that I have or see if this was a heavy level in the past. Was this a heavy resistance or support? Was this a heavy supply or demand? And if you're not familiar with what supply and demand is or the difference between that and support and resistance, hey, I got another video explaining that, but I will say supply and demand is much more heavily weighted than support and resistance. Support and resistance can be short term. Supply and demand lets you know that that's where the buyers and the sellers are really waiting to hit the trigger. All right, so we're going to go to the charts. We're going to look at Tesla, and I'm going to give you guys a rundown on finding your levels, using different time frames to confirm your levels, as well as making your move. Get right into it. So you may look at this. Let's zoom this in. You got all of these candles that's just spanning across your screen. And in a sense, you can kind of identify where some heavy hits are or a particular area that you could watch. But this here could be confusing on finding levels. This is the 5-minute time frame. Let's go to the 15-minute. It cleans it up a little bit. We see where some heavy touches are and some heavy levels are. Now, let's go to the hourly time frame. And it starts to clean up even more. Now, we're going to use this to do a quick markup. Now, with Tesla came right back to an area that I was looking for it to come back. Now, I initially was looking for it to come all the way back down to 400 with that earnings pour down, but we didn't quite get there. All right, so I'm going to get a box, and I'm going to put that box right up in this area here. Okay. So we're going to put it right up in here. Now, a lot of times your levels that you're looking for won't always be exact levels. Sometimes they're ranges or zones to where you're not focused on a specific 415.96 or 410.18. It won't always be specific, and you don't have to force it to be specific. Look for a zone, okay? And so that's why I use a box here. Now, this is the hourly. Let's go to the 4-hour. And the 4-hour brings it in for us a little bit more while also giving us a bigger picture over a wider range of time. Now, this is what September. So from September up until now, we have enough information to kind of aid us in making our move. Okay, so when you are trying to see how strong did the bulls come in, how strong did the bears come in, those wicks will tell you, or the simple touches of an area, a price point, or a range, or I would say a zone, will tell you how strong an area is. So let's bring this down just a little bit. Right up in here, and we're going to start over here. So when it was last in this area here, the low was about 409 and they pushed it up to about 419. That's a $10 move. We got this area hit again, and let's see, it was 411 and they pushed it up to 428. Now let's come over here around this same little area, not quite there, but almost. It was at 415. They pushed it up to 426. It's showing you how hard the bulls are stepping in to push the price up every time it gets back to a same area. Here, we're up some, almost, but not quite. The low, 416, but they pushed this thing up to 430. They definitely stepped in and just showing you how strong this area is and where the boards are waiting to pull the trigger. Now, I will say Tesla moves like this almost every single day. So a specific level will have a specific reaction, but sometimes it could take a couple of candles to kind of really start pushing this thing up, but you will always see where it starts. Okay, kind of up in this area here, it was let's see, 415, they pushed it up to 426, not quite, almost 417, and they pushed it up to 443. And this right here, which is Thursday, it touched at 413 and it pushed up to 430 and it continued to push up. Okay, so what does that tell you? This is a heavy area. You notice it wasn't exact numbers. It wasn't exactly 415, 413. We were working with a little bit of a range here, okay? So we can kind of even bring it up a little bit so that we can see the area that we need to watch for us to pull the trigger on our move. Now, I did say, if it get below this here, you can see perfectly where we would probably have our next target. I was personally looking for them to bring this thing back to $400 with this pour down that we had from earnings, but it held firm in this same little area here, came down to 413, and it started to push back up. But breaking below this little box here would bring us even further down to 402, 400, even potentially where this little gap is right around here, which is, let's see, 396.66. Okay, so you see how easy it is to kind of find your level, because a lot of times you can spot them almost immediately, especially if you go to a higher time frame. Now let's look for a little bit of confirmation on the levels that we just looked at. How many times was it touched in that same area? Here, pushed up. Here, we pushed up again. We pushed up higher, then pushed all the way back down, drove this thing all the way up to about 478. Came back down again, drove this thing all the way back up to about 454. Came back in that same area. That's where we got this overkill here. And we hit again, and we drove this thing all the way back up. What happened again today? And this is where we are right now. Okay, so that's why the entries are so important, because I could easily say I'm going to get in this area, but guess what? Because my entry is so good, I have so many targets above that I can act on. I can make a target right around this area at 427 from getting in at about 413, 412. I will also probably make this little area about 433 a target if, let's say, you had multiple contracts, and then I got this highest target I could potentially look at about 448. All of these targets that you can aim for by simply having the best possible entry at the lowest point or the highest point, because you're able to ride it up or down from a great entry. And that was that. So this right here just shows you that, hey, when I'm looking for my levels to do my swing trade, I want to go as far back as possible. I don't care if I got to go back to the IPO high and the IPO low. I want to find levels that will give me the utmost confidence in this trade direction that I'm looking to play. And when you find those levels, mark them up. And sometimes it could be a patience game. Now, I'm not saying find the levels and only trade when it hits there, because there are short-term opportunities that you may can find. But you're keeping these levels on your radar, because you know that when we eventually get back there, upside or downside, this is where it will really set off an amazing trade, because I was patient enough to wait for it to get back to this level and then make my move. And that's exactly what Tesla brought in this particular example that I showed you guys here. And it's also a part of the 10K trade that I did with Intel. This is my second 10K trade. My first one was Tesla right before the election happened. And looking at Intel in a very heavy level that has been holding up for a period of time around that $36 level since it got up there from the Nvidia investment news and a number of other news. It's been holding there. I said, okay, when we get back here, this is where I'm going to make my move, because I like how it's been holding up. It holds up today, I'm going to make my move. All right. So I really hope this helped, and I hope this is something that you can use in your next trade, whether it's tomorrow, next week, or whenever you're ready. Use that. Use different time frames for your confirmation, and you can even use lower time frames to make your move. And with that, I will see you guys in the next one.